Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind, episode 119.
So the really best thing that we can do for ourselves, for our spouses, for our children, is learn to love and care for ourselves in a really divine way to heal our own negative emotion. And the more whole and healed we become, it will raise the other people around us to that level.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Lorana Johnson. Lorana is a medical laboratory scientist working at the local hospital. Through her own life experiences and seeing the poor health and emotional problems of her patients at work, she realizes that there had to be more than just a pill to make life better. Like most of us, Lorana wanted to heal her own emotional pain and assist her family in finding greater peace. She began searching and studying all forms of emotional healing. In the process, she found rapid eye technology, which is RET. RET is a process to clear and release negative behavioral, emotional, and mental patterns. It utilizes blinking eye movements and imagery to facilitate the process. Lorana is a master rapid eye technician. Lorana is a mother of 4 children and 2 delightful grandchildren. She's also an engaging and entertaining speaker and loves to teach classes on emotional health. Welcome, Lorana.
Well, thank you.
This is a fun topic because I think more of us struggle from emotional pain than we realize it. And so I'm hoping that we can spread some good information to our listeners. Do you want to briefly tell us a little bit more about yourself, your family, hobbies, and then tell us a little bit about your profession?
So I was raised in a large family, and I was the oldest child, and there was a lot of expectations of what we would do as far as education. And so right out of high school, I chose a profession that was appropriate for a woman in those early days of the world and became a medical laboratory scientist and was very Western-based in my medical beliefs. And yet I've, over the years, have seen that that's not working for people and that people would repeatedly come back with the same issues again and again. And it didn't matter, what pill they were put on, they were still suffering, and I thought there's got to be more to it than just this pill stuff that goes on. And during that time, I also went through a divorce, and I was seeing a counselor at that time, and she said to me, "Lorana, it is really important for you to take a look at yourself. I know that to all outward appearance, it looks like Jim is the bad guy, but it takes 2. And for you to be in a relationship with him, there had to be your part in that. So I want you to really take a close look at yourself as you move on and heal yourself so you don't make the same choice again." And I think that is so true. You hear stories of the woman who is married to the alcoholic and he dies and she marries another alcoholic and, keeps repeating the same pattern. So it became a huge goal of mine to become whole and to start to understand why we attract into our lives the things that we attract, whether it's in our outward physical world or in our physical bodies. What are we doing that's attracting that? So I began reading and studying, and I would have to say one of the books that really opened my eyes is called Remembering Wholeness by Carol Tuttle. And it really brought forefront of my mind that I needed to really look at emotionally what was going on in my emotional body. And she was a rapid eye therapist, and so I began looking for a rapid eye therapist that could work with me and did some sessions, and I found it so healing to let go of those negative beliefs, and many of them false beliefs that we take on, so that I could move forward with life. It was like instant diet. You go in for an hour session, you come out just feeling light as a feather because you release so much negative emotion that you've carried around in your physical body. So that's kind of how my story began. That was long, but that's how it is.
No, that's great. And go ahead and tell us a little bit more about like what the rapid eye technology is like. I talked a little bit about it in the bio, but maybe it's something that people don't understand and how that therapy works.
Okay. It's based on the fact that we have a long-term memory I picture it as a filing cabinet. And then we have our short-term memory, which is in the front of our brain. And so everything that happens during the day, we put in our short-term memory. And then as we sleep at night, during our REM sleep cycle, is when we open up the big filing cabinet in the back and tuck everything away from that day's experience. Like if you don't get enough sleep and you wake up with a foggy mind, it's because you weren't able to clear out you didn't get enough REM sleep to clear out that short-term file. So in rapid eye, and you may have seen people in their REM sleep before, usually little children, their eyes will be closed, but you'll see their eyeball moving around underneath their eyelid. That is the sorting process. Their eye is actually moving around, sorting through everything and putting it in the right cabinet. So by me using an eye directing device and the client blinks, we're able to access that long-term file while they're awake and release negative emotion. That really, I think the coolest thing about it is we don't have to relive any of that negativity. If you went to talk counseling, you'd talk for months and months about this experience that totally emotionally destroyed you as a child, or about maybe something if you were a Vietnam veteran or something that really kind of caused your post-traumatic stress problems. But with rapid eye, we don't really have to hash through all of those details. We can open the file, release the negative emotion that was there and let that go, and then put positives back in place of it.
That's pretty awesome.
So it releases all the negativity connected to that.
Your bio said that you use breathing and imagery to facilitate the process. How does that take place?
Well, think about a really interesting type of breathing. It's called a stutter breath. If you've been crying and you go, kind of that letting out a lot of little breaths at a time, those are all ways that we emotionally release. And if you look at people when they're under stress, they don't breathe. They barely take a breath. They never fill up the bottom part of their lungs. So breathing is a really great way to release. So we take great big deep breaths in and breathe out the negativity as we work. So we're releasing through the eyes, through the breathing, and you can even feel some things release through different parts of your body as we do the session.
So you're using your light or whatever to help them release that from their eyes, but you're also doing the breathing techniques as well.
Right.
To facilitate it. That's awesome.
All right. Then, of course, along with that, there's a lot of coaching that goes with that. We can release all the negative emotion that's in your entire being, but we're creatures of habit, and we tend to go back out and do the same thing again. I'm sure most of you have been to a great workshop that has wonderful ideas, and you come out of there saying, oh, this is wonderful. And then you go home and you get back into the same old rut and do the same old thing again. The real key is where we're thinking and how we're performing in our life. So as we do the releases, after we do the releases, then we'll talk about some practical steps that can be made in daily life to facilitate that change to stick.
To maybe not repeat them, and so it doesn't get bottled up.
Yeah, go out and recreate. Most of us have a core belief that holds us back that we brought maybe even clear from the womb. An example of that would be a child who is not wanted. And he's in his mother's womb, but he knows he's really not wanted.
Yeah.
And then when he's a little child, every time he gets rejected by a friend or is asked to leave the room, he says in his mind, see, I'm not wanted. And then he gets in school, and there's all this social pressure, and if he doesn't get in the right group of friends, oh, see, I'm not wanted. Or he doesn't get on the sports team or get the part in the play, oh, see, I'm not wanted. And then grow up, they didn't get the job, see, I'm not wanted. And they keep creating this belief that they're not wanted over and over again in their lives.
Well, and sometimes we can be thinking those things and not really consciously know it, right? I mean, that's what you talked about, the REM sleep, it's filing it away. I mean, sometimes it will file it in there and we don't even realize it. Is that correct? Or
Yeah. Yeah. And then suddenly something will happen, and you go, oh, like a lot of times as I interview people before we start, I'll give you an example. I've been working with a guy who suffers from anxiety, and he doesn't understand why. As he looks at it logically, it makes no sense to him. But we went back and I talked about his birth family, and he told me that his mother kept having miscarriages before he was born, and in fact had a full-term stillborn child right before the pregnancy that carried him. So she was so anxious the entire pregnancy that she would lose him. And his little body inside of her, his little spirit, took on that anxiety, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't even know where that began. So we actually did, in Rapid Eye, we would call it a birth clearing, where we went back to that time he was in the womb and released all of that negative emotion connected to being anxious that things wouldn't work out.
That's pretty
And
neat.
it just totally cleared that feeling of anxiety that he was carrying with him.
That's awesome. So tell me how you feel like your paradigm has changed over time and with your experience with this technology.
Well, first of all, I recognize how vulnerable children are. I don't think I had really any idea until I started working with people. And actually, children are so different from one another. One child could really take on the energy of an experience they had where they were maybe criticized or corrected and just take it to heart and say, that's fine, I'll change. And another child, it could emotionally really be harmful to them. So it's really important for us as adults to learn to be in tune, to feel that we're all divine beings and we have a spirit within us that can guide us. And we know when we're being harmful and when we're being loving. And I think it's so important that we're aware of what we're doing and just pause and think about how what we're saying or doing is going to be received.
Yeah. Well, and we hear that children are resilient, but there is a lot of emotion and, like you say, things that are said to them that you carry with you for the rest of your life, especially if you're already struggling with, those feelings anyway.
With that
right?
certain thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what were some challenges that you had along the way, and then what did you learn from them?
Oh, well, I think my biggest challenge was, I think it started as an oldest child when I tried to take care of all my younger siblings, feeling so responsible for that. And then when I married, I had this belief that, and I think a lot of women do this, they marry potential rather than the person that is really there.
Yeah.
So, you see in this person great potential and you think, oh, if I just love them enough and help them enough, they'll be able to make these changes in their life so that they can be happy. But what I've really learned is you cannot give anyone else a self-esteem. People cannot love themselves by being told to love themselves or even by being given things or being loved by someone else. It has to be a realization they come to themselves.
Yeah. And many times they don't even want to change, right? I mean, you can't make somebody change.
So what I came to understand is that I really was enabling or a codependent, and that I needed to heal that and take care of myself and become whole and healed before, and other people just leave them in a space that they can do that.
Yeah.
We can't fix anybody else. We can only fix ourselves.
Yeah. But what happens when we do finally kind of fix ourselves? What success have you seen with that?
I see every relationship we're in as a dance. So everybody you work with or your spouse, your children, you're all in a dance with one another. And you learn this dance so that you don't step on one another's toes. And as you change and grow and become more whole, your step changes. And they're forced to change their step or get out of the relationship. Or they'll try to force you to go back to your old dance step, right?
Yeah.
But if you really are growing and learning and loving yourself, they will also absorb some of that. So the really best thing that we can do for ourselves, for our spouses, for our children, is learn to love and care for ourselves in a really divine way to heal our own negative emotion. And the more whole and healed we become, it will raise the other people around us to that level. If you go to I don't know, a lecture or a church meeting, and you hear the person that's speaking suggest something, and you're thinking, oh, so-and-so really needs to hear that, or, oh, he really needs to hear that. That's not the purpose of you going. You need to be going and saying, what can I take from this that will help me to grow and mature spiritually so that I can lift others around me?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, it is not our job to fix anybody else.
Yeah. A lot of times
it's our job to fix ourselves.
A lot of times we're just disappointed when that doesn't happen anyway. Yeah. But when we do fix ourselves, I think that's when we feel the most empowered.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. For sure.
Before we go on, let us take a minute and hear about our sponsors.
Hello, Firestarters. It's Mark here. I know there comes a time each week when you listen to all the Luminous Mind podcasts that are available, and in a sad voice you ask yourself, what am I to do now? Well, despair no more. Just go to theluminousmind.net and start your free 30-day trial from Audible and download 2 free audiobooks. Now you can fill that downtime while you wait for the next Luminous Mind podcast with a great book from the world's largest selection of professionally narrated audiobooks. You can choose from over 180,000 titles, including new releases and bestsellers, and you can exchange any book you don't love anytime, no questions asked, with a great listen guarantee. So until the next episode, start reading and keep the fire burning.
Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with Lorana Johnson. Tell me what mentors you had along the way that made a significant difference in your success that you've had, and maybe what your educational journey looked like in regards to becoming a master rapid eye technician.
Well, let's see. I think a really huge thing is I read, and I would read and underline and write in the columns of things that I felt were true and that were important for me, and then journal about it. I just have journals and journals. Writing is a very great way to sort your thoughts, to release negative emotion, and to begin to understand yourself better. So on my website, I have a whole list of books that were really influential in my life. I also, when I got trained, went to the Rapid Eye Institute and learned the whole modality of rapid eye. So the people there, Renee Johnson and Nell Beckstrom, were really instrumental in teaching me the science behind why that works and how it works. And for me, being, a medical lab scientist, everything had to have a basis. I can't just, there just had to be some kind of proof in there for me.
Yeah.
And I just have to say, and this may not be appropriate here at all, but I would say Jesus Christ is the greatest mentor that we have. When we look at the way that he treated others and loved others, everyone, no matter what their background was, he had love for them and knew them. And that would be who I try to emulate as far as a mentor goes.
Yeah.
It's my goal to stay in the light, which to me, Christ is, I am the light, he said.
Yeah.
So I see him as the greatest light and teacher there is. And it's my goal to. And everything I learn, I ask myself, is this bringing me closer to Christ or farther from Christ? So I measure against that. That's my measuring stick.
Yeah, it's definitely one mentor that won't lead you astray or disappoint you in the end, right?
Right.
So
right.
That's great. So let's move into kind of some of the services that you offer, and then maybe some success you've seen. We've talked about a few successes that you've seen, but maybe some successes that you've seen with those services.
Okay. I teach a lot of just local free classes in the area, which are a lot of fun and I hope enlightening to people to get them to take a really good look at themselves. So that's one of the things I do. I do rapid eye sessions. I have done them on the phone, but not usually with a new client. I really like to see them in person. I'm a one-on-one person or a small group person. It's not my interest to thousands of people at once.
Well, it doesn't sound like it would be as successful, right? I mean, it is a very intimate thing, right?
Yeah. And I created my website as a way for people to use it to work on themselves. I have a blog there that I spend a lot of time on each blog, and I make sure that it's something that by the end of the blog, they know something they can tweak in their own life, or a way they can use that to take that home with them and really use it to improve their lives. So I feel like people can just read the blog and find healing there.
That's great.
So, people can come here for rapid eye sessions. And then with my bed and breakfast, I reserve the whole area for a small retreat that I do every 2 months. And I just have 3 people, and during the weekend they get, it's 4 days, but they get 6 rapid eye sessions. And we do some group coaching, and I have a caterer come do all the cooking. And then they have free time that they can journal and rest and do the other things that they need. So it's really an amazing healing weekend.
Oh, wow.
And I designed that specifically for women whose lives have been darkened by loved ones that have addictions.
Oh, wow.
Because that's really what my background is. So it's an amazing weekend. And it's a way I felt like I could touch people from a farther distance.
Yeah.
They could come here and stay.
That sounds wonderful.
I have a reading list, so there's a lot of things people can do for themselves there. I have the reading list so they can read books and write and journal. And then I have just the blog that they can read. And then just free classes that I offer here and there, and sessions that I do here individually, or they can buy a group of sessions or just one session. And if somebody from out of town did want to come, they could come stay here at the bed and breakfast and do a session or 2 a day or something.
That's wonderful.
Just anytime.
So what's,
and then, the retreat.
Okay, and then the retreats. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some successes that you've seen with products? And we talked about the man that wasn't ever feeling, had the anxiety and stuff, but what other things have you seen?
Well, just a little side thing. I had a girl come in for sessions, and she said, this is not what I'm here for, but I have a huge fear of dogs. I have been scared of dogs my whole life, and I don't even know why. I absolutely freeze. I cannot go into a house if there's a dog in there. She said, so if you could work that into the session, that would be great. So I thought, that would be fun, So we just mentioned it throughout the session, releasing this fear of dogs or animals or being attacked, and releasing it as we were doing her other work. And she came back and said, I have got no fear of dogs. She said, I went to a friend's house. She has this little dog that just ran around, jumped on my lap. I petted it, and I had no anxiety at all.
Wow, that's pretty neat.
So, and I did a session on I guess she'd be my niece-in-law. She said, I am so petrified of the dark. And her husband was out of town a lot at night, and, like for his work, he would be out of town, and so she'd be home alone with her little kids at night. And so we just did a whole session on fear of the dark, totally cleared that up. And she can walk around her house now with the lights off, and it doesn't bother her at all. There's just a lot of things like that are really incredible. I worked with a girl who, she couldn't get pregnant. And believe me, this is not medical advice at all. But we did a bunch of clearing on her childhood, and then we did some work on her second chakra. And I don't know how many are familiar with chakras, but they're energy centers of your body. Your second chakra would be your creative chakra, and it's located where your womb is at. And so we did a bunch of clearing on her second chakra, and I had her do some creative things in her own personal life, just to build her creativity, which is a huge part of that creating a child thing. And she was able to get pregnant and have a child. I'm not taking credit for that or saying that's anything medical. Just by clearing up her blocks to creativity, she was able to conceive.
sometimes we don't even realize what our psychiatric, things are stopping us, those thoughts and stuff that are stopping us, creating roadblocks. Right.
Yeah, holding us back from being who we could really be.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So tell me some of your long-term goals, something that you plan on, things you plan on doing in the future.
Oh, wow. I really love my retreats and seeing a change in people as I don't know how to describe it. People come in, and when they leave, their countenance has changed. There's just more light in their being. And I love seeing that change. I really would love to be able to do that all the time. Right now I work in the lab at the hospital and do rapid eye as well. And it would be great to be able to just do that all the time and see people's lives really change.
Wow.
What I do now is treat illness, right?
Yeah.
Figure out if people need, what their medical needs are now in the laboratory. But what I really love to do is be able to do that.
Do you see the opportunity to combine those things? You talked about, the Western medicine versus this new kind of technology. Do you see that? Can you combine those things, or do they work kind of in opposition to one another?
I really think the huge problem is pride. The medical doctor thinks theirs is the only answer. The chiropractor thinks theirs is the only answer. The homeopath thinks theirs is the only answer. And I would really love to see an integrative. In fact, I've dreamed of like an integrative health center where you could go in and talk to somebody at the front door, wherever the first office you go in, that explains what's going on for you and have them say, I think massage would work for this, or I think this is really emotionally based, or let's do both of these, and in the interim, let's put you on a medication, but let's try to just have this medication be short term. So many medications, if you look at let's take Ambien, for example. When Ambien was approved by the FDA, it's only approved to be used for 3 months. It was designed for someone who's been through a horrendous experience, death of a family member, some stressful trauma that they can't seem to sleep. So Ambien was meant to be a crutch for just a short period of time till people could get their life back together and then sleep naturally. Well, people use that for years and years. It's no wonder we have all these horror stories about Ambien because it's not even approved to be used for years and years. But people don't know how to move away from the medication to all the natural, wonderful things they could do for healing, for their sleep, if we're using Ambien as the example.
Yeah, it's kind of the American way, right? That we think that a pill or some quick fix is going to make everything okay. And what's your thoughts on that then?
Well, and I just feel like for everything, there are times that people really do have experiences that they become clinically depressed and they need that pill to help them just survive day to day. I've been there. I remember right after my divorce when it was just like I was living in the darkest fog. It was just so thick I could barely see where to put my foot in front of the other. We almost went on, it's kind of an automatic pilot where you just get up every day, you go to work so you can financially take care of things, and you keep feeding the kids and sending them to school,
Yeah.
Because the fog was so thick you're not even really living, and gradually you walk out of that fog and it's a little brighter, and then one day you go, oh my gosh, the sun is out, because you've emotionally healed to the point you see the sun. So I think, if you're really struggling, let's take that medication for a short time and then work on your emotions and healing yourself so that we can say, let's start weaning you off of that stuff so you can really, really be whole and see the light.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, I mean, what your therapist said to you is that, unless you made the changes, you were just going to fall right back into the same situations, right? And so...
Yeah. Just like the ruts on a road, we get in this rut and just keep falling in that same rut again and again until we actually make the effort to step aside and say, I am choosing something different.
Yeah.
And it's a choice. Nobody can pull you out of it. You have got to choose it.
Exactly. So tell me, if you could leave a legacy, what would it be?
like what would I want on my gravestone?
Yeah, exactly.
That I loved Christ and that I just loved and lifted others and spread light everywhere that I went.
That's great. I've put that question in there, but really legacy is an everyday process. It's a process of becoming. Isn't that correct?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. And so learning and growing and changing is just a continual process that we have, and to be
for
whole.
Sure.
So.
Mm-hmm. It's like those stair steps. Each time you reach another level, you see another thing you can achieve, and then you keep moving toward that. Better and better and better.
Yeah. So tell me, before we say goodbye, do you have any final parting words for our listeners? And then give us your contact information, how someone can go ahead and get in touch with you.
Okay, well, parting words would be, choose to make that change in your life. Hold up that mirror and take a look and really desire to feel that love and that light in your life. I just think really life is to be enjoyed. And if we're not at that place that we can find joy in life, we need to take a look and choose joy. So choose joy. Let's say that's my parting words.
That's great.
And I'll leave my phone number will be on your website. And my website is loranajohnson.com. So it's LORANA Johnson with an SON.com.
That's great. And I will include your email as well as your phone number, because like we discussed before I started recording, that this is definitely an intimate thing that you do with other people, and that they can go ahead and get in touch with you by going to our website. So really appreciate you coming on. You have a very hopeful message, and I really hope that my listeners take advantage of that and get in touch with you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
All right.
It was great.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Lorana Johnson, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list and consider joining our program by going to the scheduling tab to become a fire starter today. Help support the podcast by making all your Amazon purchases through the free Amazon widget on our website. Also, sign up to receive 2 free audiobooks from Audible at theluminousmind.net. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, and now Pinterest. Get our audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider telling your friends about us. Leave us a review. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education